Hello, Shemai. It's Taylor, the co-host of the show. Quickly, before we start this episode, I'd like to give a little disclaimer that this podcast is independently hosted by Plaid Ifanc members and is not entirely representative of the party itself. Therefore, any views, opinions, or statements expressed during this podcast are entirely our own and not the party's, unless explicitly stated otherwise. So, now the boring bit's out the way, please do enjoy the episode. Shemai, welcome back to Lleisiau Plaid Ifanc, voted the most based and correct podcast in Wales by our own official rating system. I'm very pleased to announce that against all odds, despite the efforts of very malevolent forces, we have indeed actually made it to episode 2, thank God. So a friend of the party, David Iwan, was my co-host. I'd get him to sing a Mawhid by now. Alas, you're all actually blessed to have an even better voice in your airwaves there anyway. Today, of course, I'm once again joined by Go to the Gogledd, our northern correspondent, Mr. Jack Jolly. How are we on this wonderful Friday evening, Jack?
Very good on this beautiful Friday evening. Just living life as the world develops around us. It's been an interesting week, hasn't it? It's been an interesting past few days. There's a lot gone on. We've seen Pancake Day and Shrove Tuesday, and Ramadan has begun for people. So I hope everybody's enjoying.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Mubarak. And so what have you been up to throughout your week, Taylor?
What have I been up to? I've been just enjoying university, loving it. A lot of sort of difficult topics this week in university, so it's always a pleasure to be in the seminars and you don't quite know what's going on. Also been enjoying making some nice TikToks on the personal account this week. Sorry to my Plaid Ifanc followers. There will be more Plaid Ifanc videos coming soon though. I really need to get back on that. I do apologize. But yeah, this week I've been quite enjoying it. I mean, there's been a very large amount of views of some of the posts. I've had a bit of a back and forth with some fellow podcasters actually. So, that's really fun. But it's been fun. Obviously, we have to say as well, at the time we're recording this yesterday, Plaid Cymru had some marvellous by-election results, didn't they?
We did, yes. I forgot all about that, actually. Caerphilly, the beacon of hope in some very dark times.
Yeah, I know. Shout out Caerphilly, because honestly, I don't know what's in the water over there, but it must be infected with the truth. That's what the water is over there. They love hope.
Aye, and they love rejecting reform at every chance they get. Is this the 4th time now since we've had Aneirin, we've had Lindsay, we've had Alison and Jeff now, so
brilliant. They should start a band.
They should, a little band or a little cult or something.
The Avengers of Plaid Cymru at the moment.
Aye,
it's brilliant.
They are. Nah, fair play. Like, all jokes aside, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
And the team in Caerphilly they're putting on an election blueprint for the rest of us to follow, I think. Obviously, with Lindsay's win, I mean, that was a massive effort by all involved. And it seems like they've just sort of repeated the same success once again in these elections. It's really good to see, to be honest. And it gives us hope going into May. I think there was a lot of talk about Plaid Cymru, not winning a county council seat in like a year. And almost as soon as that conversation started, we won in Fishguard, of course, with Billy Shaw. Shout out Billy Shaw. And then we've won another 3. And I think we have won another one as well after Billy Shaw between the other ones. But so we've kind of overcome those talking points. And now I think we are up 5 overall on county council seats for the year. So yeah, brilliant vibe heading into May.
But
anyway, this week, just to open up, I thought we would have a little quick chat before we get into all the serious, potentially, too serious stuff. We should have a little bit of a whimsical conversation. And me and Jack were speaking earlier this week, and he informs me of his deep passion for Welsh folklore, which I do share, but I'm just a bit less educated on it. So I was thinking if we could possibly explain or just chat about either of our favourite pieces of Welsh folklore. We were talking this week with me, Jack, about
Yes.
Owain Glyndŵr and
Yes.
his potential burial spot, if anyone's interested in that. Jack is Jack is, you know, he's almost certain he knows where this burial is.
I I'm, fully convinced it's gonna be like, what's that film with Nicolas Cage where the Declaration of Independence gone
I
anyway,
have no idea what that film is, I'm afraid.
but yeah, we've been talking about folklore. I don't know, do you wanna go with your little bit of folklore first? Do you want me to go?
Well, I'm gonna be boring, and I'm gonna represent the people who are not so aware of Welsh folklore, but they still have a keen interest. I'm part of that demographic, and I'm gonna say old school. Well, it's all old school, really, isn't it? That's the point. Mabinogion, particularly, I really like the story of Branwen, even though it's very sad,
Yes.
and I like the story of the lady who's made out of flowers. Is that one? Or am
Blodeuwedd.
I Yes, that's Blodeuwedd, yeah. I'm trying to think back now. I loved it. They made like a film of the Mabinogion, didn't they? Like a cartoon movie.
I literally watched it over Christmas. I had no idea it existed, right?
It's brilliant, and
It's great.
they dive into the lake.
Yeah, it's got Matthew Rhys in it and everything, it's fab.
Yeah, it was really good. It's like a vivid memory in my mind watching that in Welsh class. Um, so yeah, I really like the Mabinogion. I think it's great. I think that's fantastic and part,
Mm.
of our culture. And to be honest, I should scrub up my knowledge on it. I feel a bit like I feel a fraud.
Well, it's alright, but, no, Mabinogion's cool. I mean, this my sort of
Bit
well,
of
no,
an
it is.
it's great for beginners.
Yeah, so, once you really start reading no, joking. But, I sort of really have an interest as well in sort of not just folklore, but like folk customs, especially as local as you can get them. So I suppose, and I think this, it's not my favourite, but it's definitely an interesting folklore slash custom, is that of the Sin Eater. And basically, the Sin Eater was
Is
every
this
community. Go on.
the Sin Eater, or like
Sin
Sin Eater,
Eater.
like the lady who won X Factor?
There was a lady called Sin Eater on X Factor.
I think. Anyway, it doesn't
Was
matter.
that? I don't know.
I thought, okay, it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
anyway, but well, I don't know about that. I have to look into that. But yeah. So basically, it's every community had a sin eater, and the sin eater, it's it's a Welsh tradition, very, very, very old. It's not practiced anymore, but there's also evidence of it happening quite recently on the border in Wales. So Shropshire, Hereford also had the Sin Eater. All references I can find about it are in English. For reasons, books weren't published in Welsh really back in the day. So I don't know what it would have been called in Welsh. I don't know, Bwyt or Pechod or something. I don't know. But yeah, the Sin Eater, when somebody died in a community, especially if he had a bit of cash to his name, the Sin Eater would come along. They'd call on the Sin Eater, and the Sin Eater would live on the outskirts of the community. He wasn't a part of the community. He was ostracized. Nobody liked him. He faced abuse. You know, he wasn't well regarded, except, of course, when they needed his services when somebody
Right.
died. They'd call on the Sin Eater would come along and they'd lay the body out on a table in the house. So the Sin Eater would come along, would place, there's records of this happening in Tregaron, down the road from where I'm from, and they'd place salt on the chest of the man or woman, but more often than not, it would have been a man.
Is
And
this
he
gonna
would
get too graphic now? 'Cause you're Plaid Ifanc, I don't want any blinking
no, 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 it's all right, it's all right.
nightmares from the younger cohort.
Yeah, I should have probably spoken to you this about, but
We'll
no,
put a trigger warning for the Sin Eater.
yeah, but they'd put this bread then on top of the salt, and then he'd pray a prayer or a chant or an incantation over this bread, and the bread was meant to absorb the sins of the person. Now, most of the time, it would have been richer individuals who would have gone to the Sin Eater, because believe it or not, sometimes the ultra wealthy in the community weren't the best people.
No, and
And
they're the ones who are the Sin Eater ate a bit of sourdough on that day when it was the
yeah,
wealthy.
bougie bread, like
Yeah,
really
avocado
nice.
toast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 He might have put some avocado on there if he had the chance. And then they'd eat the bread. The thing is, he would eat the bread, and through eating the bread, he'd absorb the sins from the bread, and he'd take on the sins of the individual who who'd died. And as soon as he'd done that, how did the family thank him? They'd give him his money, and he'd been paid handsomely. And then they would hit him and kick him and throw things at him and beat him with brushes, and they'd chase him out of the house, and he'd run back to his little hut or something on the side of the community. And yeah, that's the kind of the sad tale of the Sin Eater.
So sorry, is it assumed that he chose to live that life?
Yeah, because there was a lot of money in it. There was a lot of money in it, so he could live comfortably. But remember, I don't think if I said this, Sin Eaters oftentimes would have maybe had, I don't know what's the best way to put this, like in a PC way, but like, would have been strange to the community. So maybe he would have had a limp, or maybe.
I
So
see, okay.
he wouldn't have been accepted in the community anyway. So there might have been.
Ostracized.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a way to make money. But of course, when the Sin Eater died,
Well,
he was
of
going,
course he's got a limp if he's getting battered every day. That's what I mean. Like, he's getting beat up or something. Like, this guy's got a limp.
genuine.
It's my job. It's my job to have a limp.
Exactly. But yeah, that's basically the story of the Sin Eater. And when the Sin Eater would die, obviously he'd carry all of these sins, and well, according to if you believe in Christianity, would go to hell. But the Sin Eater would hire an apprentice who would eat the sins off of the Sin Eater. I think it's great.
Wow.
I think it's fab. I mean, it's not practiced anymore, but Prince
I feel
Andrew
bad
might
for the
need one.
oh my God. Yes, he would. Well, I feel bad for whoever the last Sin Eater was, who didn't have an apprentice, and he had everyone's sins. He's gone to like
burning.
He's at the last level of Dante's Inferno. He's with like the worst people ever.
Oh, poor thing. Aye, but yeah.
I truly feel for him. Well, that's brilliant. I very much enjoyed the story of the Sin Eater. I'd never heard of it before, but I've heard that everything that the Sin Eater did was 100% real, true, and approved as well. Because you got to make your living in some way, and what better than eating bread off a cadaver?
Oops.
Yeah. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. No, we are going to get into some serious stuff now, because we have some interesting news to share with you all. We're going to have you got to wait. We're introducing now into this Plaid Ifanc podcast a little break where we're going to have 2 minutes, and then but we're going to come back, and it's only going to be like a second for you guys. It's marvelous to see you in a second. Okay, welcome back. Well, it's welcome back for us more than the listeners. So before the break, I said we had some very fun news to share, and Jack, I thought, I think Jack's more involved with the news, or the planning of the news, so I think he can maybe, if he's confident, to launch it.
Yes. So, people, I don't know if you're familiar with the date, the 1st of March, but it's Dydd Gwyl Sant, St. David's Day. And we have arranged as Plaid Ifanc to host a rally in front of the UK Government Office in Caerdydd, which houses the office of Joe Stevens, the Secretary of State over Wales. We will be hosting a rally called Beth am Gymru, What About Wales, where we will be talking about basically how our friends in Westminster don't respect or treat us fairly. So we have a range of topics we're going to be talking about again, how Westminster treats Wales unfairly. And one of the big ones, obviously, is HS2, the Great Train Robbery, as Rhun ap Iorwerth likes to call it, where we'll be discussing, well, just billions of pounds being taken away from us, which we won't get too much into because we will be in a minute, but, and we'll be talking about how Joe Stevens wanted that money back. She, Labour ran the UK government, but now she's in the UK government. HS2 doesn't exist. But anyway, we'll also be talking about coal tips. There's a lot of unsafe, at-risk coal tips in Wales, and they're unfortunately a byproduct of our mining industry and the dangers that come with them. So that will be spoken about in the rally, as well as I've gone blank. What's the third topic?
So we are doing, and we're going to talk about them in the episode as well. We're going to be discussing HS2, as Jack said. We're going to do the coal tips, and the one that he potentially forgot about is the devolution of the Crown Estate to Wales.
That's the one.
Which we're actually going to talk about literally in like 1 second, so I won't go into it too much. But yeah, fantastic news. I got to say, very well planned from the people behind the planning, from the campaigns division at Plaid Ifanc, because we have such a professionalised team, discussing great offices and across Wales and WhatsApp groups, basically. And it's going to be a really fun event, and I think, it's lovely to actually be able to get on the ground and be visible to voice our issues. And as Jack said in the previous episode, he's, often feels like a bit more of an activist than attached to a particular party. And I think it's a chance for him to be an activist again,
Yes, to kick off
Yeah.
peacefully, and it will obviously be all above board, and it's going to be a really nice event actually, because as Dewi Sant said, as Saint David, our patron saint, said, you have to do the little things. So if you live in Cardiff, if you live in Cardiff, you're going to be maybe attending the St David's March. It's going to be at 2:30 after the St David's March, outside the UK government offices. So yeah, do the smallest thing you can. Turn up if you can. If you can't, share online, let people know. But there is one other topic that we're going to be speaking about in the rally that I forgot to mention, which is Joe Stevens' attitudes towards the Welsh language. The Secretary of State for Wales. So basically, the UK overlord over what goes on in Wales, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm sure we could put it a bit more professionally than that. But yeah, basically she oversees what happens in Wales for the UK government. And she's an MP for an area in Cardiff North. There we are. And so Joe Stevens recently upset a lot of us by stating that most of the people in Cardiff speak English, and therefore there's no need to give out Welsh correspondence. There's no reason to publish things bilingually because everybody understands English. So Cymdeithas y Iaith, the Welsh Language Society, will be speaking at this event. Owain Meirion, the chairperson of Cymdeithas, will be speaking, but his disappointment and the attitude towards the language it is just disgusting. So in Wales, we have the Welsh Language Mesur Cymraeg, and in there is a framework has been put together for the Welsh Language Commissioner and Welsh language standards, which means the Welsh Language Commissioner can put standards on certain public sector things. Don't know the words. So, for example, banks could be placed under the private sector, but could be placed under the Welsh language standards, but they aren't. So there's lots of different things placed under.
It's like a regulatory thing, basically.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there is no responsibility, there is no standard placed upon the Secretary of State, or I believe politicians in general, I think.
This is, if you may by now, I don't know if it's going to be, but yeah, it is actually, obviously, because I literally posted on Plaid Ifanc Instagram yesterday. You might have seen it, not me personally, but we posted the poster for the rally created by, shout out, I don't know if, Stefan, shout out Stefan, he's a member of Plaid Ifanc on the NEC with me, very talented at making graphics. And on there is a quote that is, there is no statutory requirement for members of Parliament to provide bilingual communications, and that is directly from Joe Stevens herself, which may be true. Okay, may be true. A, should it be true? I don't know. B, I do think that that's just a silly cop-out from the Right Honourable Joe Stevens, because even though there's no requirement to do so, you are sort of the leader of the Wales office, right? So if you're in a position that is meant to be sort of, controlling what goes on in Wales, or like, negotiating on behalf of the Welsh people within the current Labour government, she could easily have said, well, at the moment, I don't communicate via Welsh because there's no statutory requirement for it, and I don't speak Welsh, so why would I learn it if there's no requirement? But I think there should be a requirement. She could push for there to be a requirement and say, I apologise, but no, she doubled down, which kind of tells me that she has no interest in preserving the Welsh language. And I know it's a difficult language to learn for many people. I mean, I'm fluent, and frankly, I find it hard to sort of speak Welsh well all the time as it is. But I do think most people, Wales, or most of her voters largely, will say that, they respect the Welsh language. They'd love it to thrive, and they'd love it to be sort of even more of a prevalent aspect of Welsh life than it is today. And I just think it's a bit of a kick in the teeth to argue that because there's no requirement, I'm not going to do it. I mean, don't you want to go above and beyond? I don't know. Me personally, I think I'd like my Welsh office, the Secretary of State for Wales, to go above and beyond for Wales and the language. I'd like that personally.
But then again, Westminster politics, people, it's not going to happen. It's such a cop-out because translators exist. You know what I mean? And she would have access to translators. It's a cop-out. And, under the Welsh language measure, we have a legal right to the Welsh language. But unfortunately, these measures aren't being implemented in the right way. These standards aren't being are being implemented in the right way. And it allows for people such as Joe Stevens and other bodies in politics or in public services and private services to stamp all over one of the oldest languages in Europe.
Yeah. And
so, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. And furthermore, I'll just say that Plaid Cymru, of course, do have members of parliament in London. And, I know we say Westminster politics, whatever, there are some good eggs in Westminster, and it is 100% of those good eggs are the Plaid Cymru MPs currently. Statistically as well, by the way. Shout out to the MP, shout out to especially, Anne Davis, shout out to Llynos Medi as well for being very much on the sort of high level of questions and like just doing their job, I think, compared to, for example, Nigel Farage, who apparently doesn't like turning up. But I was going to say that Liz Saville Roberts, English born, and took the time to learn Welsh. I don't think she learned it to become sort of a member of parliament, but it's not like it's impossible to learn Welsh as an adult, and it's definitely not impossible to be a Welsh learner and also be a member of parliament and do your communications in Welsh. I mean, there's no need for Liz to use Welsh if she doesn't want to in Westminster, is there? But she does. She comes out. You see communications from her on Twitter and things. The other day, she was talking about a scandal that's going on at the moment with regards to, I think, an energy company. Is it?
Oh, yeah.
I believe. And she was speaking to her constituents in Welsh. She was doing communications in Welsh. And of course, I guess maybe if you're a Plaid member, you care more about these things than other people. But for me personally, I just think Jo Stevens is the figurehead of the Welsh government, of the British government for Wales. She's their representative to Wales. And the fact that she is basically saying she frankly can't be bothered to do her communication, and she seems insulted by the idea that she should speak in Welsh. It's a joke. It's a joke, right? Because it's just showing how much Westminster want to sort of ensure that we are seen as one. It's England and Wales. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's a topic that I think will be said a lot in this episode and said a lot in the rally as well, as this idea of England and Wales.
And perhaps in a future episode, there's such a history there, as we spoke about the other day. But so that's sort of the Joe Stevens Welsh language angle with Cymdeithas y Iaith. So shall we move on to our next?
Yeah, that's like the preamble to it, really, because although that is an aspect of it, I think there are like three primary issues, overarching issues, that because the language, listen, right, it is very, very, very important. There's not much we could do about Jo Stevens not speaking Welsh. Like, all we could do is say that it's ridiculous. But she has free will, and we don't actually believe in sort of a global mandate for Welsh, although maybe some of us do. But I'm not going to force anyone to speak Welsh, Anyway, but the rest of them, there is stuff that can be done about them, and the issue is that it's not getting done. So those are sort of the primary focus.
It's the only way we will save the language is through revolutionary action. And again, it goes back to what we talked a bit about last week, where activism and politics need to go hand in hand, which leads on, I think, to our next topic of the Crown Estates.
Yes, it does. And I will quickly preface by saying, in case that gets misconstrued, we are not advocating for revolution. We're sitting on the podcast, but I think, if there wasn't stuff to back it up, then at the end of the day, you know, there's at the end of the day, we're not doing anything other than speaking, and that's it's very important. I think that's why, you know, doing things like the rally will be beneficial to all of us, because at the end of the day, I think the Welsh office can ignore all they want on Twitter, and they can ignore seemingly all they want from their constituents. But when we're, you know, when they're presented with a large group of you know, unhappy, peaceful yet unhappy young and of all ages Welsh people with a megaphone and a Mawhid
a dream.
renditions and a dream, they may not be able to ignore it, but at least, you know, we'll be visible, and more people will probably be encouraged to actually take action as well, take peaceful action, that is. So yeah, the first of the three topics, the aforementioned devolution of the Crown Estate. Now, quickly, I took a very big interest in the Crown Estate, I think around a year ago, actually. So I think if Jack doesn't mind, I'll be explaining this one. I think Jack's going to explain the other two, because he's got much more knowledge than that. But for me, yeah, the Crown Estate. So I think it was around this time last year, the Crown Estate in Wales was voted to be devolved by all councils in Wales, or at least the motion was started. I believe the motion was started by potentially a Plaid Ifanc member. I know Cymdeithas were working on it, or Yes Cymru were working on it behind the scenes, but I think it was a councillor Dewi Jones.
Yes, it was Carnarvon
Yes.
Town Council, I think. Yes Cymru encouragement. Yes Carnarvon encouragement to initiate a motion. I think it was the Town Council, and yeah, Dewi Jones, I think the last name of mixed up.
Yeah, so they started the idea of devolving the Crown Estate, and, you know, I will give a little explainer, because got to remember, I think, as well, sometimes I forget that we are actually Plaid Ifanc, and I think it's important to help people along in sort of understanding what's going on, because with the problem with being a devolved nation is that, you know, a lot of our issues are actually filled with like jargon and specialized words, because the whole devolution system, all of it, like the Barnett formula, etc., is so complex that, I mean, maybe that's part of the plan, isn't it? Like, you know, if you go too complex and you make the system too confusing, people won't bother to try and decipher it and try and change it.
You get the same party running the country for 26 years.
Exactly. And then and then you get no change. But I will explain a little bit what the Crown Estate is. You know, if you do know about it, then I'm sorry, I'm not trying to mansplain. You can skip through. But basically, the Crown Estate is a collection of lands and holdings in the UK that belong to the reigning monarch, and they say it's like in right of the crown. But obviously, these days, it's not owned by the king himself. Now it's interpreted as meaning it's owned by the monarchy as an institution. And as we know, the government, the British government, is technically His Majesty's government. So anything that this sort of Crown Estate does or owns is actually owned by the government, or at least controlled by the government in Wales. Quickly, these are I've got my research from a year ago, and I was very, very into this. The estate itself has its roots in the Middle Ages, because the monarchy was like accumulating lands through conquest and like political manoeuvring. And it was in royal hands for a while, but during reign of George III, George III in 1760, an agreement was reached where a government-appointed body would manage them, and the money created would be used for the public, and then in exchange, they would give an annual payment to the king, the sovereign grant. Now, where does Wales come in? Of course, this affects Wales. The Crown Estate has assets in Wales. It has land in Wales. And I will get into how much in a bit, because it's crazy. And that is controlled and managed independently by the Crown Estate Commissioners on behalf of the UK government. Doesn't actually go to King Charles, right? So we're not angry at King Charles, to be fair, for this thing. Might be angry at the original king, but not. It's paid into the treasury. So basically, the sort of budget, when you hear about the budget and you hear about the tax increases, or, you know, the welfare spending, or the fact that they're giving a whole £25 million for 7 new rail stations in Wales. Thank you to the generous leader Keir Starmer for the 7 whole train stations. And I must add, I really appreciate the fact that, he branched out on his visit to Wales that day, and he went to Cardiff, which I think is underrepresented. He could have gone to Machynlleth, or he could have gone to Llanelli, or he could have gone to, Amroth, but he chose Cardiff. So I appreciate him putting Cardiff on the map there, because
Nobody heard of it beforehand.
nobody had heard of it beforehand. And to be honest, it seems like this actually seems like the only place Keir Starmer can go to in Wales. It actually is like he couldn't go to Caerphilly when they were even campaigning there. But
Because he
anyway,
couldn't catch a train, that's why.
that is true. That is true. But I digress. So basically in Wales, this is the issue, okay? All the profits from the Crown Estate in Wales, generated in Wales, goes to the UK Treasury. So it goes to Westminster. It goes to it goes to basically the Labour government at the moment, and they spend the money even though it's generated in Wales. So the revenues generated on Welsh Crown land can be from rents, agriculture, commercial leases. So if the government says basically, we've got this land in Wales, we acquired it in 1760 or whatever, you guys can have it for a certain amount of time, and then the private company will pay the UK government to have rights to the land. Then that money is kept by the UK government. So obviously that is a little bit outrageous in my opinion. And I think the biggest problem is as well the amount of money it is. The Crown Estate portfolio at the moment, wrong, and it is very important, but it's in the hundreds of millions range.
I think it's 853, but you'll have to double check. Don't quote me on it.
I am double checking now. So it is, upwards of £850 million as of 2023. And I wrote in my little mock-up policy proposal from before, I said, I find issue in these points as it reinforce Wales' reliance on Westminster, because obviously it just means that Welsh money is going back to Westminster, and then we need to go back to Westminster to ask for our money back. That's basically how it's working, right? And that minimises our sovereignty, because it basically, again, it just makes Wales feel less like a nation and actually have less ability to operate as a nation. And it also robs Welsh people of the opportunity for economic enhancements that their land may provide. Think about £850 million. Think about the difference that could make for Wales. To put into perspective, Sir Keir Starmer, thinks that 25 million to Wales for Welsh trains is enough to cover the trains. If that's true, then imagine what £850 million could do. I mean, we could have like the London Underground through the whole of Wales and more.
That would be a laugh. That would be great. We could film in person then. We wouldn't have to do over technology.
Yeah. Although, I mean, I don't know. I think we've spent enough time underground in Wales. Maybe not. And personally, what I propose, and Plaid Cymru, of course, want the Crown Estate devolved. Devolved meaning we want to have control of it by the Senedd, and then the revenue decided by the Senedd. Because that's another thing that goes on at the moment, is that the British government can actually just decide what to do with this money themselves. Like it doesn't even have to come back to Wales, as far as I'm aware. They can just take it and use it for anything, which I find a little bit ridiculous. Don't you think that like money made on Welsh land and money from Welsh land should be controlled by the people in Wales? I think it's quite a simple answer, really, to me. And this is the extent to which they own. The Crown Estate owns the Welsh seabed out to 12 nautical miles, 65% of the foreshore, over 50,000 acres of land, 250,000 acres of mineral deposits, and the rights to gold and silver, which is a nice one they chucked in, I think. It's a really nice one they chucked in.
It's nuts. It's nuts.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. And the largest revenue stream is from marine, so the seabed, the nautical miles at the foreshore, because of marine energy production in Wales, which is actually a buddingly huge industry. I believe Wales could become, or is slated that it could become, one of the sort of preeminent marine energy producers in the world, right? And that's a green energy source. So it's great for the climate, and it's something for Wales in the future that we could really benefit from, with jobs, with energy. We already love making energy for England and Wales, so we may as well make some more, but at least give us the money for it.
Literally, just quickly there, I'd like to cut across with back in 2018, and this was one of the big things that drew me towards Plaid Cymru was the Swansea Lagoon project, I think, which was a proposed hydroelectricity dam
Yeah,
energy making thingamabob off the coast of Swansea. And of course, who should have had the vote on it should have been Wales. It should have been the Senedd who should, but of course, because it comes under the Crown of State, it was a Westminster-based decision, and it got shot down,
yeah.
obviously.
And the saddest part about that is I was in school at the time, and I won't dox myself. Well, I probably have actually. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I went to school in Lleisiau, and so we're close to Swansea. And we used to have like photos in our sort of science thing department of like the future of Wales and like harnessing the energy of our coast and stuff. I was just really depressing that it never happened because I don't really know too much about the details of that, but I do remember it being the thing where like people in even Flash were talking about how great it was potentially going to be, you know. And it's just yeah, it just shows really the 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 evils of this whole sort of devolved land thing. And I'll finish off quickly now, but I have a few more things that I wanted to get into. Uh, and also, councils have to pay fees to Westminster every time, like because they basically councils will control like the car park of a beach, but the beach is the Crown Estate. So then, like every year or every month, the Crown Estate will send them a bill for all the money that was like obtained at that car park, and then they have to send it back. But then obviously like we get devolved funding that comes back into Wales, but it's actually less than we sent, so it doesn't really um and then there's two last things. One of them is quite big and really is the main emphasis point, but I'll save that for last. Firstly, I've got a little like it's a bit of a moral point, right? But devolving the powers is the right thing to do because the Welsh people have never consented or given permission to the monarchy in the first place. Well, or to the monarchy to own the land. I definitely didn't give it to take the revenue. So I know it's very historical and I don't want to get like medieval Wales, you know, Gwalia and all that. But
Future episode, maybe.
yeah, future episode maybe if we get a historian on or something. But, you know, Wales didn't agree to this. The people of Wales didn't agree to have their revenue taken and they didn't agree to give up the land. It was kind of absorbed, wasn't it, by the monarchy? So I just think morally it is the right thing to do. But probably Joe Stevens and Keir Starmer would agree with that morally, but they wouldn't care. Because what about today? Well, I'll tell you about today. The United Kingdom is a united kingdom by all accounts. We are all equal parties of one great country, one great state. And the thing is about that is, I think if we're very united and if we all have the same respect for one another as we do to England, you know, because England seems to get a lot more respect, I think, in a lot of these things. I think we should all have very similar powers. So why then? Why can Scotland have the Crown Estate devolved to them? Scotland they have it down to an absolute art over there with the Crown Estate because they've got, I can't remember what it's called now, and I'm blabbering on, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but they've set up sort of like a sovereign wealth fund where the Scottish government or Holyrood have control and revenue over the Crown Estate in Scotland. They can choose what happens on it and they can distribute the money. And they put the money aside into like a consolidated fund, I think it's called. And that can specifically go towards certain things in Scotland. So I think that that's a very good way to do it in future. But
Yeah.
we need to get the powers first. And I'll tell you what, the biggest part of it for me is that Scotland have the power because what is the difference really there? I know we could say this about anything, I know, and I will actually say it about anything. I do generally believe that if you're going to give devolved powers to one nation, you should give it to all of us. Because otherwise we're not a United Kingdom. We're like a hierarchy, really.
Yeah.
But like, I don't understand basically why, and I don't think many people understand why Scotland should have access to their Crown Estate control and revenue, whereas we don't.
I can give you my reasoning for why I think
Well,
Scotland has it.
I know it's because they have they had the whole revision of their devolved powers because after the referendum or before the referendum or whatever. But I'm saying, yeah, okay. But that's what, like, you know, I think it's ridiculous, and I think maybe it shouldn't take that. It shouldn't take them to have a referendum if it is a truly United Kingdom, you know.
Well, you know, the more the UK government denies us fairness and
Yeah,
equality, the more the desire for independence is going to
yeah.
skyrocket.
And I
So,
mean, And I mean, I won't shy away from talking about independence because it is actually a Plaid Cymru policy. And frankly, for a long time, I was indie skeptic or indie curious, maybe. But these days, to be honest, the evidence is piling up. And the Crown Estate is something that really riles me up because how on earth is there going to be some like medieval treaty in place that means that basically my family may own a farm on one piece of land and then 1 acre across, sort of the UK government has decided they're going to put on like a gazillion solar panels and take like 30 million a year off some company from probably a not very moral state or not very moral private company, like, you know, on land in Wales. So I think it's ridiculous. I think the amount of money it generates means that Wales could have so much more in the future and so much more of what is ours as well. And lastly, I think the marine energy thing is massive because if we had that devolved, it could really change sort of the landscape of Wales forever, literally. But also, it could change sort of the jobs. It can be a new industry. After having our industry demolished and our labour exploited for so long, there's a chance to have sort of a greener path for the future and have a new industry come in that respect. But it's being denied by us. And perhaps, that it might be the reason they don't want to devolve it is because they don't like Wales having industry. And potentially there would be more justification for an independent Wales if we had such a thriving sort of green energy sector. But I digress. I've blabbed on.
This is kind of the great hope that Plaid Cymru gives people. As Shreen likes to say it, this isn't as good as it gets for Wales, and people are slowly beginning to realise that that's actually the truth. Things could be better here in Wales if the right investment, if the right opportunities were being created here. But of course, they're not being created in here because all these decisions are made by Westminster. So we do need more devolution to be introduced into Wales, and, in my opinion, the end goal should be independence. But in the meantime, we should have devolution so we could begin to build our industries here. And yeah, this is what Plaid Cymru offers people, and this is why we're seeing so many people turn from being Labour supporters, Conservative supporters, whatever, to joining Plaid Cymru, because we do offer that hope, and it is tangible, and it can happen. And if we carry on campaigning, it will happen, so don't lose faith. Don't lose faith at all, yeah? Things can be better. The grass can be greener.
Look at this. Look at the passion, the anger that's coming out from Jack Jolly once he has a rally in his calendar. The man.
Go on, Will.
The ma darogan wedi ymgnawdoli at gyfnerthiad. See, I can't believe it. Honestly, you're so right though. That was really, really impassioned. And I think the thing is, the rally will be the chance to show that people are really serious about this. And they're serious. They'll take that seriousness out largely at the voting station. However, it will show that, there's real demand from real people in Wales. And it's not just going to be sort of people voting in Plaid Cymru. It's going to be, even when Plaid get in, we're going to still need to demand it because they're not going to just hand over the devolved powers like that. And
of course. But yeah,
go. We'll move on to the next one. I think we'll have a little break and then we will come in to Jack's explanations. I'm really bad at explaining things. I'm very sorry about that.
No, it's good.
Back in a jiffy. Hello, welcome back. We're enjoying our little breaks now. So moving on into the next thing, and it is a bit of a serious topic compared maybe to the Crown. I mean, they're both very serious, but this might be a little bit more of a sort of emotional attachment to it for a lot of people. So just want to clarify that, although we do make, we try and bring up humor into things a lot. We are very serious about this. But if I do make any stupid jokes, all right, it's because we're coping. Yes. So just so we wanted to talk about the coal tips, and it's very, very pertinent to Wales. I think one of the biggest legacies of Wales is industry and the exploitative labour that's been taken and extracted from Wales. And I don't think anything is more sort of symbolic of the Welsh extraction than the coal mines. And the coal mines, they now run under us like underground rivers. They scar our landscape, but there's even bigger reminders of that industry in the form of coal tips, which are a topic in the rally and a topic that Jack is going to give us a little brief introduction to now.
Yeah, so as we all know, coal has been a massive part of Welsh industry and identity, even, especially in the valleys. Coal mining, well, it was huge. It was basically the blood of Wales at one point. Um, we've seen obviously now the coal tips have shut down, but the coal we were the largest exporter of coal. We were world leading in it, and we essentially fed the Industrial Revolution. The coal we produced, it was massive. It put Wales on the map on an
Well,
international.
I mean, from what I understand, it was Welsh coal that went down with the Titanic. Obviously ironic because we did all that work to bring it back up, and then
It went straight down.
it went straight back down, which is obviously okay. Yeah, but it just shows, I think, like, I believe that is true, and if it isn't, coal is such a massive part of Welsh identity. If you do any sort of genealogy, if you're a little like nerd and loser like me, you may have done a lot of like family history tracing. And for me, I'm from Lleisiau, I'm from Carmarthenshire. Go back to about 3-4 generations ago, and my family, who started off in Carmarthenshire, went to the Rhondda to find jobs, and they stayed in T Llwyd, I believe it's called, maybe, or something
All
along
right.
those lines. Or Llety Shenkin, I believe it was called. And yeah, one of my great grandfathers died in a mining disaster, or a mining accident, and it just it shows that even if sort of I didn't have any idea that I had a mining background, and yet I still did, and I think that just shows how sort of ubiquitous it was. It was everywhere.
Well, that's the thing, the coal, mining has obviously been, but coal was the big one. Barry didn't exist until, the coal mines came along, coal exports, especially obviously in the south where the big coal belt was. It was, it was Wales's industry. And unfortunately, as we know, the coal industry is a very touchy subject in Wales because, like you said there, you've got a relative who passed away in a coal mining incident. And obviously the big one we need to talk about, which is Aberfan on in 1966, I believe.
1966.
21st of October, yeah. Which obviously it's just awful. It killed 144 people, 116 of them being children in school in Panglas. So yeah, this is the context we're giving before we get into the coal tips. The Aberfan disaster was completely avoidable. It should not have happened. There's no reason why that should have happened. So for context, the coal industry in Wales had been led by mainly private companies for a long time, but eventually coal became nationalised and was run by the Westminster government. The National Coal Board was created, and locals in Aberfan had contacted the coal board so many times saying, look, we're really, really, really concerned about this coal tip. It's way oversized for the regulations it's meant to be. We're worried it's going to slide, and unfortunately it did. And the legacy that incident leaves behind is just vile. It's horrible. And it could have been completely avoided.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, what we're seeing now is coal tips again. We've clearly not learned our lesson because of all the coal tips in the UK, 50% of them are located in Wales. Of all the coal tips in the UK, 50% are in Wales. And when I found that out doing my little bit of research, I could not believe it.
Is
We
that
have.
sorry? Is that because obviously we had a large, huge mining industry, but is that because do we have the most coal tips now because they've sorted the rest out?
I'll have
Or
to
is it
double check. I did
right?
question this, but I couldn't find anything in time for our podcast, so I'm not sure. But yeah, so in Wales we have 2,000.
Wow. Wow. Sorry, I haven't actually got much before anyone. I haven't got any much information about coal tips generally. I can't believe there's that many.
The
That's
fact that
actually
this isn't being spoken about is actually insane. When you consider this, you've got to be careful in the way we talk about Aberfan because it's such an emotive subject. So, I don't want to politicize the incident, but were definitely lessons to be learnt, and we have not, well, lessons haven't been learned from Aberfan. So out of those, 2,500 coal tips, nearly 2,600, 350 of them are classed as Category D, which means they are at extreme risk of sliding.
how many did you say?
350 are at risk of sliding.
And the Welsh, the British government is privy to this information. They know that information. That information probably came from a government body, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And none of this isn't being spoken about. And people who live in the shadows of these coal tips in South Wales are terrified, are absolutely terrified. And you can't blame them because we have seen coal tips slide recently, one in Abertillery and one in Blaenau Gwent quite recently in the past year, I believe. And that's due to increased rainfall.
Yep. It'll only get
So
worse with climate change as well.
exactly. So it's integral that we stabilize these tips. And this is a bit of information that I didn't understand. But Ben Lake spoke at an event or on a news channel, and he said he didn't realize this either, that the coal that had made the foundations that the Senedd stands upon was waste from the slurry that slid into Aberfan, which is very powerful, I think. Very powerful.
Yeah.
Governments have a responsibility to protect their citizens, which is leading into sort of the next point. So Neath Port Talbot, obviously, very industrial area, has the highest number of coal tips in Wales, 600. 13 of them are at risk of sliding. We're seeing how, in Port Talbot, obviously, the steel industry has been shut down when it could have been saved, but that's a whole other discussion. And looking back, something we should have
Yeah, I mean, talk
incorporated
about
into our rally.
talk about a symbol of like just everything in Welsh history, sort of in one town in Port Talbot. I mean,
It's
it's
extraction.
just ridiculous. And I won't forget that this is sort of. I might go on a little bit one tangent here quickly. I've just got two things quickly to say, and then I'll let Jack carry on. In Port Talbot, this is sort of the attitude of British government towards Welsh industrial workers and the Welsh sort of industrial landscape. When they shut or they fail to save Port Talbot blast furnace and Tata Steel, or despite then a week later saving, I believe they saved the Scunthorpe one, or maybe I think they did, and then they didn't want to save the Welsh one.
I did.
Yeah. What did they offer to the workers? They said, we'll set up mental health hubs for the workers. And, okay, perhaps they actually did help. I don't actually know. Maybe there's people listening to this who went to the health. It's a nice idea. But the point is that no real, nothing like sort of economic wants to be given back to the people of Wales for A, what's been taken from them, and B, from the risks that are being posed. And I think earlier what you were mentioning about Aberfan, and I agree, we don't want to do want to talk about it a lot, but it is how you don't want to use it as a political football.
Weapon, yeah.
Although it is, I believe, a political event, because the only way to sort of prevent another one is through politics. You don't want to be saying sort of like, I don't want to make it a partisan issue. It's everyone. If a reform member wants to join and say, like, let's stop coal tips, they're more than welcome to join, because that is sort of the memory of, it's for the people, right? And I think with Aberfan, though, I know that Aberfan isn't the only way a coal tip can happen, and obviously that was a mass tragedy, and coal tips do affect, like the ones you were mentioning earlier may not have been as severe, but they still have profound effects, right?
And we owe it to the people who, and well, especially the children who passed away, to actually take action on this. And so yeah, this is leading into, I'm having to read off my phone because unfortunately I can't seem to get it up on my laptop, my research. But yeah, Caerphilly has 207 tips, 56 of them at risk. Anne Davies, who's the MP for Caerfyrddin, wonderful woman, fantastic, breath of fresh air in Westminster. She led a motion, or well, just a debate, sorry, on the 22nd of October, the day after the Aberfan anniversary, 22nd of October 2025, obviously, because we're at the beginning of 2026, wanted to hold up to account the UK government. So the Welsh government stated that 600 million is required to stabilise these tips. How much do you think Westminster has given us to stabilise these tips? Around a third of that. Recently we've been given by the Labour government 118 million over 3 years to stabilise them. And we're meant to act like this is fantastic, this is great, and it's not. It is not the responsibility of the Welsh government to stabilise these tips. These tips were created by the Westminster government, okay, and partly by private ownership before it was nationalised. The responsibility to stabilise these tips falls with the UK government, and they are refusing to properly enact and stabilise these tips. So, in the meantime, we have to essentially wait for more money to come in. I think Luned Morgan has requested for more money to be given, but, you know, as is this special relationship the Welsh government has with the Welsh Labour government has with the English Labour government, nothing's actualised, you know, even though we're meant to celebrate this two-way relationship that doesn't exist. And so people who live in the shadow of these coal tips are very worried that basically when the next rainfall comes, and we'll see more of them with global warming, they might get it next. And it's a miracle that no fatalities have happened so far. I also know that people are concerned as we're seeing more and more minor earthquakes happen, specifically around Swansea area. Don't know what's behind that. I'm not an earthquake guy.
You're not the Richter scale inventor.
Yeah, exactly. But people are worried with more of these sort of mini earthquakes developing. Okay, they've not been able to cause any damage to homes or property or whatever.
Well, it only takes one. It only takes one incident. You know what I mean? It only takes one like sort of chemical like rainfall to occur in such an anomaly way that a
Exactly.
tragedy happens, and it's all preventable at the moment. And they're saying, oh well, you know, it hasn't happened yet.
If those cold tips have experienced enough rain and a earthquake happens, that could cause a tip to slide. And Hugh Iranca, I think I've been calling him Hugh Iracana for some reason for a while, yeah, until about 20 minutes ago when I realised I was saying it wrong.
Yeah, Hugh Iranca Davis, is that?
Yeah. He has essentially told Sky News interviewed him and they asked him, can you give a guarantee that a landslide will, if the landslide were to happen, would lives be lost? Is that preventable? Could that happen? And he could not give a guaranteed response that, no, we can't guarantee that lives won't be lost. And it's just disgusting. Every year we rightfully have silenced moments to remember the tragedy that was Aberfan. And we are not, well, we are trying to do things to enact to make sure something like that never happens again. But unfortunately, the Westminster government isn't working with us. And so Plaid Cymru has been calling for the UK government to foot the bill for all of it, which they could do relatively easily. But obviously, Wales doesn't matter, which goes back to the theme of our rally. What about Wales, Beth and Gymru? Plaid Cymru is calling on them to stabilise these coal tips and properly fund them so they are safe. So our people are safe. So As well, very quickly before I finish, Adam Price, who is our former leader of Plaid Cymru, back in 19 called upon 20 billion in reparations to Wales for essentially the mass extraction of wealth from Welsh communities by the Westminster government. Imagine what we could do with 20 billion. I don't believe it's a policy anymore for Plaid Cymru, so I don't want to mislead people. But it was certainly something to consider, because look at how our communities are affected by the way the coal mines was shut down. The wealth was extracted, was never put back into our communities. And on top, so which has resulted in lack of industry, lack of jobs, increased poverty, and it starts a cycle because there's no industry for people who are living in these communities. But also, interestingly enough, I just want to check in the debate that Anne led on the anniversary, well, the day after the anniversary of Aberfan. Do you know who was not present in this debate in Westminster?
Well,
Reform.
ah,
Reform were nowhere to be seen. This is a party who wants to reopen the coal mines, but doesn't want to stabilise the coal tips we already have. I don't want to get too emotive, because I understand that it's a touchy subject, but what we need to see is stabilisation of these coal tips to stop a tragedy from ever happening again. And thus far, the only party I can see, and I might be wrong, I think maybe the Greens have started looking into something. We need to stabilise these coal tips, and we need to stabilise them now. And it is not the responsibility of the Welsh government or the Welsh people. We have paid in lives and in suffering for this coal industry. We are not going to pay to stabilise the mess of the UK government. So come with us and make that point on the 1st of March. It is the UK government's responsibility, and it's about time they cleared up their mess.
yeah, exactly. And with the coal tips, I just think, honestly, with what you were saying with Hugh Iranka Davis saying, a tragedy isn't off the cards. And okay, it is very, I don't want to fearmonger people, at all. However, I think if this occurred, in England or in any country that presents itself in the way that the United Kingdom does, where there's a sort of an idea that we're world leaders in certain things, and we go out and Keir Starmer is more than happy to pontificate about how, British, whatever, British values, etc. We're so patriotic. If this was going on in any other country, it would be, it'd be national headlines. I had to hear about Hugh Rankin Davis saying that through the Plaid Ifanc podcast. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's a joke saying that basically the Deputy First Minister can't say that there's no risk of a loss of life happening, and they're just not wanting to do anything about it. It's a massive kick in the teeth for Wales, and it's actually the coal tips thing is just it's bizarre. It's bizarre how it's really out of sight, out of mind, isn't it? For Westminster, that's what it is. If they were living in those communities, I don't think that they would stand for it. If this was happening, if there was a coal tip in the middle of London overlooking Whitehall, would that not get sorted out? Because I believe it would get sorted out.
It would be sorted out immediately. These coal tips have sat here for decades, and the fact I obviously knew about the situation, and I've been doing some research now, and I still cannot believe the extent of how bad this situation is. And I can't believe that the UK government is basically willing for this to potentially happen. And okay, to be fair to the Welsh Labour government, they have been asking, but hopefully that will reiterate where Wales stands in this union, and this special relationship that we allegedly have with the UK government, it doesn't exist. And unfortunately, that is going to result in it's Labour's commitment to this union-based, relationship, and especially if Labour are leading the union, everything's going to be great. It's their commitment to that lie, and it is a lie, is what will result in them losing this election. And I don't want to get into too much sort of electoral politics or whatever, but it's the truth. You know what I mean? They could have fought for this way before now, People are scared. People are really scared. And think about it. If you own a home in this area, you can't sell it because your property value's dropped. Because you can't guarantee that that house isn't going to get coal slip.
So it's just so sort of medieval almost that we sort of try and act like that this is impossible. Or the way, I believe it was Joe Stevens in a Guardian, it was Joe Stevens in a Guardian article in the middle of the summer last year after Plaid Cymru had come out with sort of a demand for the amount of money, or at least sort of told how much money it's going to take, and then money was given and it was pittance compared to the total, as you were saying. And Joe Stevens said in an interview that month, basically based on this comment, that you could give Plaid Cymru the moon and they would still be annoyed, or you could give the Plaid Cymru a moon on the stick and they'd still be annoyed. And it's like, I don't think Plaid Cymru are annoyed because they want to have the money. They're saying this is how much money needs to be given to protect people's lives. And it's outrageous that Joe Stevens doesn't at least take it a little bit more seriously. I know they put out stuff about making coal tips safer, but behind these PR communications where they're saying we're giving X amount to these people, and okay, maybe good work is being done, but the good work being done is vastly outweighed by the amount that still needs to be done. And frankly, it won't be over. And I don't think Plaid Cymru or Plaid Ifanc should stop talking about it until every coal tip in Wales is cleared or secured, and we are ensured that there isn't going to be a tragedy, because we need to get to a point where the Deputy First Minister is able to say, actually, yes, there is no chance of anything bad happening.
There is no chance that these actions that happened, some of them the best part of 60, 70 years ago, 100 years ago in the making these coal tips have been, there is no chance that the past, which we had no control over, is going to end the lives of our citizens. And the fact that the UK government and the Welsh government cannot fight to stop that, cannot work together to stop that from happening, quite frankly, is pathetic.
Yeah,
And
it's embarrassing.
it's embarrassing and it's shameful. Come with us again on March the 1st to really highlight this. We need people to know the actual seriousness of this situation, because it's disgusting and there is no place for it in such a modern country as the United Kingdom. There's no place for it.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's quite a good idea, obviously. It might be, I don't know if people would want to do this, but if there is anyone who sort of lives in the vicinity of one of these coal slips that would like to speak, and it doesn't have to be in a partisan role. I don't care if you could be voting for Reform, Labour, Tories, Lib Dems. If you feel passionate about this and you want to speak about sort of the impact it has on your community and whatever emotions it causes or whatever worries, because we can't sum it up, because I'm lucky I don't live in that fear, but I don't know, there's probably other things that come into play that we haven't even considered. And if you would like to speak, then we would more than be willing to a speaking spot in that event. Okay, so back from our final break, you'll be glad to know. We were talking about, of course, our rally going on May the 1st in Cardiff, Be There or Be Square, and we've discussed the two of the three main talking points from that rally, which were coal tips and the Crown Estate Devolution Bill. The last one we'd like to touch on is HS2, and we will be skimming through this a little bit quicker just because the other two spent quite a while on those two.
Look a minute.
Yeah, HS2 is also sort of something that's going to be communicated very heavily by Plaid Cymru and has been already. So we kind of think we should probably leave some of it to the higher ups. But just as a little thing of HS2, so you might have seen Reen on Good Morning Britain, which is actually one of the, I think I mentioned it in the introductory episode, was probably my Plaid awakening, because yeah, him and Kate Garraway were having an interesting debate about it. I don't know if it was a debate, because Green was basically
She didn't even know what she was talking about.
Educating her about it. And so that's a very good clip to watch if you want to understand the scale of the HS2 stuff. But basically, it's about devolved railways, but also more specifically about consequentials from the Barnet formula, which are simply, well, not very simply put, right? It's a very confusing system, as we talked about earlier. But basically, when the British government does a project that is on a matter that isn't devolved, I believe, or it's on some matters anyway. Basically, if they do it for England, they have to give relevant money to Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, because it's like that's how the fairness whole idea of this United Kingdom works, right? So if they spend money in England, they give the same like worth or value to Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. And they do this, of course, because if England is benefiting, other people should benefit. However, there's a project called HS2, lovely project that was connecting, I believe, Birmingham to
Yeah.
London. And was like, there's so many different versions of it. Probably on HS a million now, but HS2 is the main one. And yeah, it's been going on for ages. And what happened was it is designated as an England and Wales project. So the consequentials of this would go to Scotland. They went to Northern Ireland. However, Wales don't get a dime. And now you may say, well, there must be a reason for that, isn't there? There has to be a reason for that, surely.
It's got to be the Welsh's fault, surely.
So, yeah, exactly. So there's been numerous sort of attempted justifications given. The fact is, not a single metre of track, no station, none of the construction is in Wales. None of it. It's called an England and Wales project for seemingly no reason. Now, the attempted sort of retort to this, I think it was Kate Garraway, to be honest, who said, well, it's going to benefit Wales because Birmingham is kind of close to Wales. It's not how it works, really. And Scotland and Northern Ireland, of course, have had money. But because it's classified as England and Wales project, that means Wales gets no ban economic consequentials, whereas Scotland and Northern Ireland do. Now, why is this an issue? Well, it's not just sort of like a moral, emotional issue. The estimated loss to Wales is £4 to £6 billion over the lifetime of HS2. So that is a lot of money, I think. Don't you think, Jack?
I would love to have that much money. You know what I mean? What could Wales do with that cash? But of course,
Yeah.
we're not allowed to have access to it.
Yeah. And Scotland did receive the full consequentials, of course. And actually, I don't know, maybe Northern Ireland didn't, but they usually receive consequentials. But Scotland did receive the full consequentials from HS2, and that is because rail infrastructure is devolved there. However, in Wales, we love to have just the smallest level of things taken away from us, like the smallest little fine print in these devolution papers for Wales. England, the UK government loves to do to us. So we don't have rail infrastructure devolved. We do have rail services devolved, but not rail infrastructure. So the people who run the trains, or sort of like the law making around running of the trains, you see Transport for Wales, are controlled by CNF. However, the track it's on, apparently, we have no control over. Utterly bizarre. Utterly bizarre. I mean, it makes no sense. I feel like you should be all in or all out. It should either be, we tell you, we sort out the times, we sort out who's doing the trains, we sort out the payment or whatever, and we sort out the tracks, or we sort out none of it. Why do we have to deal with like half of it?
Westminster.
It's so funny. It's so funny. It's so childish. This is why we're not going to spend too long on HS2, because this is the most ridiculous one. The coal tips one is just sort of gut wrenching, at least to me. Like, it's actually just really upsetting and worrying. And the Crown Estate, again, is like, no one is going to imminently die from that, whatever. And no one's going to imminently die from HS2. But HS2, it's almost like something out of the thick of it. The way, like, it's at one point, I think it's been said recently that HS2 just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
They've spent. No, carry on.
Go on. No, I was going to say, Joe Stevens, obviously the Secretary of State over Wales. I'm not going to say of Wales because I believe it's most certainly an over Wales. Before Labour got into government in England, was to the Conservatives, we want our money, we deserve our money, where's our consequentials? And then she's become the Secretary of State for Wales. What's HS2? We don't know what that is.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist anymore. It's a joke.
I mean, it's actually such a scandal, such an immature scandal from Welsh Labour. It's not immature from Plaid, because I'll tell you what, without Plaid, right, this is where I'm going to get a little bit partisan now. Without Plaid, you wouldn't hear about HS2 at all. Only Welsh Labour kind of showed a bit of interest, but then once they got into power, they were like, oh, actually, do you know what I mean? We can't be bothered. So I'm very grateful for Plaid Cymru in this sense, because this farce could be going on and we wouldn't have a clue about it. There's so many different aspects of it where people have said ridiculous things, like government officials have said ridiculous things that can't even fully get into it. But it's like we're being penalised yet again for having less autonomy, and this money that we're missing out on could go towards, electrifying major routes, making our trains run a bit better, making sure that perhaps, when you want to go from South Wales to North Wales, you don't have to switch trains in like Stoke. What what is that about?
Why, it's nuts. It's nuts. And very quickly, just to cut to what you were saying there, like if Plaid Cymru hadn't brought this up and would be talking about it, coincidentally, all three topics, all three of them, if Plaid hadn't been started speaking about these, and the reason they started speaking about them is because they worked with the local communities who were affected by them, or campaign groups, as we saw with Yes Cymru campaigning for the devolution of the Crown Estate. Nobody talking about these. And people can say, Plaid Cymru don't stand up for Wales. These discussions are in the mainstream news now because of Plaid Cymru. The unfairness and the injustice is being showcased because Plaid Cymru is shining a light on it.
Yeah.
Sorry to go across, but yeah.
No, I mean it's bang on. And listen, this is the Plaid Ifanc podcast. We've been talking about this like sort of rally, but we are going there as sort of proud, by the way, proud member of Plaid Cymru. And at the end of the day, it's true what you're saying, and I agree that like it is because of local communities, right? Because obviously with the coal tips, I'm not going to argue that sort of Plaid have come in as some messiah. I don't think either of us would argue that. And it's like, oh, thank God for Plaid Cymru for like trying to save people's lives, because it's obviously the local communities. But that's what politics is meant to be. This is how our democracy is set up. Our democracy is set up to be local people being represented by politicians. What we have at the moment, it seems, is local people voting, and then, especially with Westminster, what you have is your local people voting for the Labour Party, for Jo Stevens, and she goes to Westminster and forgets about all of your issues, and it's like she's gone onto a TV set or something where she's like not allowed to actually do anything to do with Wales, or she is, but she's only given like little allowances. It's so bizarre. I mean, we've lost the sense of democracy in Britain. The whole point is you vote for a person to represent your views, and luckily, thank goodness, Plaid Cymru seem to be, and I'm sure there are good MPs from other parties. There's some good eggs, but Plaid Cymru across the board, I know for certain, are very much focused on local areas. That's, Lindsay Whittle, huge results based off that. When I go canvassing with Kevin Campbell in Carmarthen, not only do I get people on the doors going, yeah, I'm voting for Plaid because I love Kevin. Some of them, bearing in mind, maybe don't care about politics, but they can see their members of the Senate doing great stuff. It's the same for Anne Davis, okay? You go to Carmarthen,
Yeah.
like a rock star there. She's like an absolute rock star. And I'm not going to try and belittle any particular MPs. Sorry, Jill Stevens, we have done that, but actually, I'm not that sorry. But my local MP, if I go canvassing in Llanelli, all I get from people is Nia Griffith going yet? And I'm grateful for her long-standing service to the community, but I think the problem when you have a party in government in Westminster is that they tend to then forget the reason they got elected. They forget the people they were elected for, and it's sad. And HS2 is just another one of these. I mean, why on earth wouldn't Jo Stevens, why on earth doesn't Keir Starmer want to give Wales, we're meant to be United Kingdom, whatever's good for Wales should be good for the UK, but instead it's whatever's good for England is bad for Wales. That's what it seems like to me.
And just to preface that really quickly by saying, that's anti-English. No, it's not. All sovereignty in the UK leads back to Westminster in London. This isn't a Wales versus England issue. It's really not. But that's where the Parliament is situated in. That's where the majority of MPs are. The majority of MPs in Westminster are English MPs who are there to represent their communities. We are meant to go to Westminster to represent Wales, but we just get shot down instantly. And, Tryweryn is the perfect example of that. Every single MP minus one voting against a flood a Welsh village. That because all the MPs in England have said, no, let's do it, that's sort of the unfairity of the situation. So, yeah, just wanted to press for that by saying it's not a Wales versus England thing, just in case people want to check an accusation that's unfounded.
Yeah, you're so right as well, because to be fair, I slip into saying England just because of when I mean the UK or Westminster, but I think that just shows sort of how it feels to be in the United Kingdom. And also, I will say, I don't at all get behind the sort of like anti-English people rhetoric. That is silly. It's easy, it's sort of, I shouldn't even have to say it, but like, I'd imagine if I met a Green voter from England, for example, I'd get along with them quite well. I'd get along with most of them quite well. What I don't like is the actions of the state that exists within England. All right. And typically English politicians who are sort of negatively affecting Wales. There's plenty of English politicians that positively affect Wales. Look at Liv Roberts.
Exactly, bingo. And well, Plaid Cymru is obviously a nationalist party, might have maybe slipped away, well, not slipped away, but maybe developed into something bigger in recent, years post the Senedd. Um, but this is something my mum always told me, actually. Some of the greatest people who have contributed to the Welsh nationalist cause for Wales are the English. And I remember her telling me, when somebody from, like, I'm half English, my dad's English, when when somebody from England moves into Wales and starts getting involved in sort of Welsh politics in favour of like Plaid Cymru or like the Welsh language, they are oftentimes the ones who commit the most time to it.
Mm-hmm.
They get not, I don't say extreme, but the most passionate for the situation. So you know what I mean? Like, and this Savile Roberts, perfect example. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
English born, lives in Wales, has completely part of the community, and is doing a fantastic job. I've got to say, I love when I see videos of Liz in Westminster, standing up and saying what needs to be said. It's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's fantastic. And this idea, and I think we're pretty much done with the HS2 thing now. But this is an
Yeah.
important thing to say, is that this idea that like whenever Plaid Cymru or sort of, Plaid Cymru more, I was going to say generally Welsh nationalists, but that maybe there are some Welsh nationalists who are like, have a weird thoughts towards all English people. But when Plaid Cymru or people like me and Jack are speaking out about sort of issues that derive from certain English people and politicians and Westminster, it's not a sort of representative of our views towards the entire English people. I mean, Plaid Cymru, all right, I'll say it, we're a very woke party. I don't think we're going to be out here committing xenophobia and racism. We're very much, I don't believe in any of that towards anyone at all. So
Ultimately, Gwynfor Evans put it perfectly. All Wales is a community of communities, and he's completely right. The word Cymru literally means like fellow countrymen. If you live in this country, you are a part of our community, whether you like it or not. You know what I mean? And that's literally,
and
what? Go on, yeah.
I just think, and then this contrasts with the ideas that have been on the right wing of politics for a long time, because like Margaret Thatcher, I mean, that's like a direct antithesis to what Margaret Thatcher said about like, there is no such thing as community, there's just individuals, right? And where you see with Reform, who seek to create a sort of environment where being British is an exclusive club, and being Welsh is part of being British, whether we like it or not, instead of saying, anyone who lives in Wales is Welsh, no matter what. They're trying to say, so only some people can be British, and only some people can be Welsh. Whereas we say, pretty much anyone can be Welsh. If you put your mind to it, you try your Gore class, we will accept you.
Literally, you know what I mean? We're all just people at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, get a grip.
Even Joe Stevens,
Yes, even Joe Stevens.
But to summarize, with HS2, it's like these consequentials. What you were saying earlier about Adam Price with the reparations. I mean, these consequentials are almost sort of like a mild form of reparations to us. And, I will just say on the reparations part is that I did want to say this earlier as well, is that obviously with reparations, like, I think that idea has been canned or maybe pushed down the line a little bit, because I do believe there are other demographics who are significantly more deserving of that. I think we have our stuff to focus on. I think the reparations debate can happen with sort of the descendants and the people who still suffer from the horrific oppression during colonization, transatlantic slave trade, etc. So, I don't think we expect reparations. It is nice to know the figure. What we do expect, though, is these consequentials. Do you know what I mean? That's what we expect. It's like, there's no accountability for actions in any in anything with this. And it's like the least they can do for Wales, at least, is to give ban its consequences. And yeah, I just can't believe it. And there's no reasoning as to why it was said to be England and Wales as well. It was literally just to cheat Welsh people out of money. And that's all that needs to be said about it. Simple as.
It's literally the most straightforward. You know what I mean? It speaks for itself. And it speaks for itself when, well, before she was Secretary of State was all in favour of it. But of course, when her boss, Mr. Keir Starmer, said no, then everything went quiet. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
But we're gonna close up shop now, but I think for the last maybe 5 minutes, we'll just speak, because we've got the rally coming up, and I hope all of this has sort of ignited within you the need for the rally and excitement for the rally. If you've listened to the whole thing, absolutely marvelous job. And then if you've listened to this whole podcast and you don't come to the rally, that's a very
True.
I can imagine that there are some people who've listened to this whole thing and thought, those two are going to the rally, I'm going to be as far away from Cardiff as possible. They've listened to this whole thing and they're actually going to apply to be a caseworker at the Welsh office now, just to spite us. I wouldn't be surprised.
If you've listened to the whole thing, you're doing great.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, if you listen to the whole thing, put a thumbs up in the comments, but I think we're going to get 0 thumbs up. Anyway, doesn't matter. So yeah, we got the rally, and we hope this ignited that need for you to come in. And so, as we mentioned previously, we're going to have, I believe, Jack, a speaker from Cymraeg.
Yeah, Owain Meirion, chairman, Cadeirydd Cymdeithas yr Iaith, he'll be there speaking. And he'll do a very good job. He's a very good speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very passionate. It'll be great.
He was, he was on the panel discussion for the Plaid Ifanc conference event last.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. Oh, you didn't go, did you? To the last conference?
No.
Oh, yeah, he was on that, and he spoke really well. So that'd be really nice to hear him say a few words. Maybe me and Jack will say a few words, but I'm not sure about that, because we might end up hogging the whole event.
Genuine, it'll turn out. By the way, we've been filming.
We've been filming this for about 4 hours, over 4 hours.
When we're having those little breaks where you think it's a movie, it's good.
Yeah, it's crazy. But this is just how much we love Plaid Ifanc, and we're so committed to it. So yeah, so the rally's gonna be very interesting. There will maybe some other groups tagging along, but I must say the organisation of it and sort of the leading of it was Plaid Ifanc and Cymdeithas. So very happy with how it's been organised. We hope to have a good turnout there. And yeah, it's going to not be... Jack, you were saying something maybe in the break that you wanted to mention a difference between maybe the rally and a rally and a protest quickly. Because this could be some people's first sort of political campaign or event,
Exactly, and it's just like I said in the first episode. I'm political, but I do love a bit of activism. And I remember, who was my first protest? It would have been Cymdeithas yr Iaith anyway. And so basically, some things to keep in mind is obviously bring as many friends, family, whoever you can. Because remember, the St. David's Day parade is going to be just beforehand, so we'll try and have some sort of presence there. If you can, bring along a placard or a banner, a Welsh flag, any sort of, or if you're a Yes Cymru member, bring along a Yes Cymru flag, because obviously they've put a lot of commitment into the HS2, the Crown Estate stuff, sorry. If you want to bring a placard along, we'll be doing videos on the Plaid Ifanc TikTok, and they'll be on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, how to make a banner or how to make a placard, what to put down on them. So all of that stuff will be going up. So bring that along. But yeah, the main difference
really... I'll be watching those videos with intent, because my artistic skills are awful. So I would like to know.
Yes. Well, I'll help you. We'll make one together.
Yeah, Lleisiau Plaid
Ifanc placard. But yeah, basically the main difference, a rally is just sort of like speeches. It's like, they'll be as super easy as you want them to be, or as intricate as you want them to be. This is going to be pretty grassroots, so I think it's going to be cool. Yeah. It's basically just speeches, usually in front of something you're speaking against or speaking in favour of. And yeah, so it is sort of a form of protest, but it's not going to be... I think people get worried when you hear the word protest, we're going to get arrested. And No, because we to do an event like this, you've got to contact the police anyway, and we've done that. We've contacted the police. They're aware that we're going to be hosting this event. So don't be afraid of anything like that. This can be completely peaceful. It's going to be super chill. You're going to meet all sorts of people, hopefully some Plaid Cymru politicians if they come along. I've heard one or two of them, I won't name names, but will be in attendance.
Well, as an emergency candidate, it's a big moment for anyone. If they want to meet me, they can have a selfie with me.
You can have a conversation with Taylor, but you're going to have to spare
Yeah.
2 hours, maybe. Probably.
Yeah, that's there's going to be a raffle, and the grand prize for that is going to be a 10-minute conversation with me, and the money will go to the Welsh government towards the HS2 consequential fund.
Yeah, we're going to try and raise the consequential funding for HS2.
Yeah.
Nah, all jokes. But,
yeah, there's not going to be a raffle, probably. It's not that type of vibe. So that's the difference between a rally and a protest. There's no raffle.
There's no raffle. But yeah, no, it's gonna be completely peaceful. It's not gonna be.
Do you know what? I think we've said it's going to be peaceful so many times. That's actually sounded like it's.
Don't want any trouble. It is though. It's gonna be super chill. And
yeah,
go on.
I was just going to say, though, as a preface, all right, because we're talking about placards and signs, please understand and Google and scrub up on what you can and can't put on placards. I think it's relatively obvious in your own brain, and I don't think anyone would actually do anything that they may get in trouble for. But let's be conscious about it's a public event, and there are laws in place. Just please, whatever you think of any laws to do with like anti-protest laws, whatever, they are in place. And what we don't want is any sort of carnage going
Kicking
on.
Off.
It's just not. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I know the topics are very emotive, but when not, it's gonna slow down the march to freedom.
Your presence there is going to be the thing that speaks the loudest. More than any placard, more than any flag, your presence showing you're supporting this cause or that you're interested to know more about this cause, that's what sends the message. It's not the placards, it's not the flags, it's your presence, it's people power.
You, the listeners, by the way. He's not speaking to me.
Yeah, okay, oh my gosh, I'm not talking to... Who's this Taylor guy?
Taylor's presence is what makes the difference.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's going to be a good event. It's going to be a laugh, and we hope to see you there anyway. And we might have a bit of a social thing afterwards. We'll see what happens. Yeah, come along.
So yeah, that is, you're thrilled to know. Me and Jack are I'm actually sad that this is the end of the podcast.
I've loved it.
Yeah. So we are going to try and get this out the week before the conference. We're going to try to get this out basically by the Monday. We're recording this on Friday the 20th, so I'm going to try and get it out by Monday. But we need to get out the introduction episode as well, so we might just drop a double episode for people. It's like 4 hours of content of us, but we want to we need to do a Welsh version as well, and then hopefully we'll do a pre-conference one. That'll be a little bit shorter next week, probably.
We forgot to even mention, conference is going to be happening like the day before this event. So, if you're a student, or at least in a Welsh society in a university, the Eisteddfod Rhyngolegol, the Rhyngol, will be in Cardiff. So it's just all the stars aligned. Yeah, it was meant to be.
Yeah, and just be careful with that one actually, because it will throw you off. February is a short month, so despite conference, being on the 28th or whatever, March 1st is actually directly after it, so just be careful, because I fell for it. I thought I had a few days in between, and I don't. Absolutely don't. There's no 30th, there's no 31st, there's not even a 29th most of the time. So, so just be careful with that. And yeah, this is the end of the second episode of the Plaid Ifanc podcast, which might have turned into a movie at this point. I'm going to hopefully edit it down for you guys.
We might have to cut it into 2 parts.
Yeah, well, that'd be fine, even if we have to do that. But yeah, we're going to try and get this out, and then we'll have hopefully a little pre-conference one next week. But these should tide you over for the next week. Hopefully, tide the 4 of you over, or whatever. So yeah, hope you have a splendid weekend. I hope you don't get too in your feelings about HS2. Don't get too in your feelings about the Crown Estate, because they are sad. But try and go outside and and touch the grass and think about nature, and take it all out in the rally.
in a peaceful, there's that word for the
in
final time.
a peaceful manner.
Manner.
And at the end of this very peaceful podcast, thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for being here, Jack.
Thank you very much i ti, diolch yn fawr.
Dim problem o gwbl, and that is the end of it. I can't believe it is. That's it. All right, hwyl fawr.